experiences are with the Power Platform. So I'd really appreciate it if you could just click on that link and just fill in those questions. And then we'll just have a look at those shortly after I do my little intro here. And like I said, it just gives me a bit of an idea of what everyone's skill level is like on the call. And, you know, if you do put anything in the box at the bottom about what you want to learn about the Power Platform, I can also work that into the session as well. So, okay, I'm like really nervous about Teams just crashing on me because I was doing a presentation yesterday and it just failed. So fingers crossed. I think we're good right now. So if someone wouldn't mind just saying if you can see my screen, maybe just in the chat, you just put a yes or something. Or a thumbs up. Does that mean you can't? Okay, great, thank you. So yeah, so I'm going to be presenting today on how we can use the Power Platform with finance, and in particular to do financial forecasting. So to begin with, I'm Jessie. I'm a Microsoft MVP. It's coming up to a year that I was a Microsoft MVP now, so I was awarded last December, so very new. And I have my own YouTube channel called Jessie's Power Channel, and I have been developing for client projects in Power BI and Power Apps and Power Automate for a number of years now. I've now moved into the global team at Avanade, where I'm doing more of kind of architecting solutions, and now I have I guess a more strategic view of like the whole of the Power Platform. But what's nice is, you know, I have done a lot of development work, so I do understand like the pains of what developers go through and what that journey can be like. I've actually been at the other end of the Power Platform as well. So the way I got into my career is I was at Heathrow Airport, and we were then using Power BI as like our kind of development tool. And I came to a crossroads in my career where I just had like a bunch of like Excel reports, as a lot of us probably do still now. And yeah, it was just a kind of, if I chose to do Power BI, then my career was going to continue at Heathrow. If I didn't, I'd probably have to figure out another job. Luckily, I loved it. And now I do that full time. So that's great. So if I just have a look at if there are any responses on here. So I thought I had none there for a second. So I'm just going to load this and we'll have a look at what everyone's skill level is like. Don't worry, this isn't named. I haven't taken any of your names actually. So it's just a bit of stats. So we've got some experienced Power BI users and some beginners. Fair enough. Lots of experienced Power Apps users here, and lots of experienced Power Automate. So quite a few experienced people on the call. And then what methods have you used? So straight line forecasting, Excel, Power Query, dashboards, Power App applications, and Power BI. Okay. I thought I saw more. How to integrate forecast Power BI from Power Apps. So yeah, we'll be able to do that. Solution packaging and distribution. Yeah, I can touch on that. It wasn't planning on with this topic, but it's definitely something we can have a quick look at. And let me just click on some of these. None, Excel, cool. Cool. Oh, thank you. Great to have you on. Thanks. Okay, cool. That helps. So what I'm going to run through is we're going to do this forecasting using the tools of the Power Platform to begin with. So we have a Power BI report that I'm going to show. We're going to use the Power Apps visual in this Power BI report to show how we can forecast. And then we're also going to look at how Power Automate can actually refresh this Power BI report. So let's come across to this Power BI report that I have. I'm just going to go on this page here. I'm going to run through what's actually in the model to begin with, so that you have an idea of the data that we're looking at. Essentially, this is a finance data set, and we can see the relationships of the tables here. So just to run through a couple of these tables, I don't think we're using every single one of these, so I'm not going to run through every single one, but I will for the ones that we are using. So this one in the middle is called finance data. So this finance data table is essentially the core data. So that's where we see a view, and I'll just show you that table as well. So you see what kind of fields are in that table. Loads. Essentially, we have a date, a month, and then we have the amount in that particular row, and that links to the account key. If I come across to the account key, then each of those account keys link to an account, right? So essentially in that finance table got some actuals for accounts. And in this relationship view, you can see that accounts here is linking to finance data on the account key. We've also got some other dimensions. I'm not really using a lot of them too much, but we've got departments and organizations, and we've got dim dates. Now there's a few tables on here, which we'll come back to. So this says forecast details, and we're going to build out how to do this forecast. So in this Power BI report here, I have an income statement. So I basically have my accounts here, and then I have some actuals, and I have some forecasts. And you see here that these forecasts are actually varying, and I'll show you how I built that out. Before we do that, however, what I want to show to begin with is Power BI has its inbuilt feature, which we called our what if parameters, all right? So in this modeling tab here, I can click on new parameter. And hopefully something will come up thinking about it. And I can select this parameter, and it's basically like a variable, right? So it's similar to what I do in Power Apps. I have like a variable in Power Apps that I can set and change and then multiply that across. Yes, Sumit, I can provide the data set and the solution as well. I actually have it in a GitHub, so I'll pull that out at some point, either at the end of this call or shortly after. So in this parameter, I can basically say I want it to be a decimal point, and I want it to go between 0 and 1. And just bear with me, this will make sense once I've actually put it on the page and started doing stuff with it. I want it to be between 0 and 1, so I want to multiply basically. So I'm going to say that this multiply can go up in 0.1s, and its default is going to be a 1. So as soon as I create that parameter, it is going to appear now on the right-hand side as a parameter that I can pick. So once that parameter has appeared, I can pull that onto my report page. And at the moment, it's just kind of sitting there. It's not actually doing anything. So I'm going to change it into a list actually. And I can select values from it. But it's created a table here. And this table is called parameter2 because I haven't actually renamed it. And it's called parameter. So what I can do now is I'm going to create a measure in dim accounts. And I'm going to say, whatever I select my parameter to be, I want to multiply that by the actuals amount. So I'll create a DAX formula. So let's call it forecast demo. So I'm doing that right now. And then I'll take my actuals. And I'm going to multiply. Oh, no. So my computer likes to behave really, really slowly whenever I'm sharing on Teams. Okay, so I'm actually just because of how slowly everything is being. I'm going to use one I've created before, but it's the same concept. So I'll be able to walk through that a little bit quicker. So on this page, I haven't got anything different on this side, which is just a parameter. So it's the exact same parameter that I created before, and it's called parameter. On this chart, however, I do have this forecast what if measure, which I created previously. And this measure is basically taking the actuals and it's taking that parameter value. And all I've done here is I built a very simple line chart. And in this line chart, we have the dates running across the bottom. We have our actuals and we have our forecast. So as I select on here, every single value in my forecast, in my actuals table, is being multiplied by this forecast. So you can see it's quite obvious. So, if I multiply it by 1.3, the forecast goes up. If I multiply it by 0.2, the forecast goes down. So this is the built-in feature of Power BI, which is definitely worth talking about when we talk about financial forecasting. But what this doesn't give me is the ability, easily anyway, to actually multiply against each of my various accounts. So, I mean, in theory, I could create lots of different parameters and I could try and, do lots of like complicated DAX formulae, and I could say, this parameter links to this account, etc. But rather than doing that, we can create a Power App. So what I'm going to show you is, I'll show you the Power App first, and then we're actually going to create that from scratch. But I'm aware that quite a few on the call are advanced Power App users. So I'll run through that bit fairly quickly, as it may not be as interesting to you. And then we can have a look at like solutions and stuff like that as well, as someone had asked. So on here, what I've done is I've embedded a Power App, and Power Apps actually embed. And I should have embedded it. That's okay. I think I've got it on another page as well. So essentially, I have a Power App that I can pull into this page. And what it will do is it will allow me to actually remodel those accounts. And I'm storing that data in SharePoint. And then those multipliers are then applied to each of those accounts. So let me show you the Power App first. So the Power Apps visual, and I'm actually just going to pull this in. So that link seems to have gone away, which is fine, is included in Power BI here. So if I click on that, I get a couple of options. So I'm asked in a second after I pull in some fields. So in order for the Power App to actually start integrating, I need to pull in some data. So I can say I want to choose an app or create a new app. So I'm going to choose an app that I already have. So I have this finance Power BI scenario already, and I'm going to skip. So that's actually been brought into my app here, or into my report. Now, once that's loaded, what we'll see is a list of accounts and this ability to pick a forecast. Okay, so I'm going to go through and just submit something here, just so you can see it in action. So, and I'll put some comments against this as well. So I say demo, so you can see that actually appearing in the Power BI report in a little while. And I'll go ahead and put some of these at different numbers as well, and put some of these at different numbers as well. Now, you'll notice that I'm actually in the desktop builder right now, just to show you a couple of bits. So I'm going to go over to the report server in a second. I'm going to save this now. Now, once I've saved it, I'm heading back to the slide deck for a second. Where this goes is into a SharePoint. If I just open up that SharePoint here. So this is my app in edit mode. And I am going to show you a little bit about how these bits are built. Is that data goes into the SharePoint. Now, this is a SharePoint I've made to store forecast details. And when it loads, what we'll see is we have a couple of columns that are account. So we have the account type here. So employee benefits, for example. We have the forecast prediction. We have the commentary. And I put in this email sent. So for example, we could be sending account holders emails. And we have the entry date as well. So I'm storing when that email is actually getting sent. And for this particular forecast, the way I've essentially made this work is that my latest forecast will always be the forecast that is used. So this is a very simplified process, right? We could expand this quite a lot, but that record which we saw appear has actually been saved in this SharePoint here. So if I come over to my report now in the server, I did not tell Power Apps to refresh it myself just now, as you may have seen, but I have actually made a flow refresh it. So what's happened here is when I clicked on that button and we clicked on Save Forecast, it kicked off a flow in the background to refresh the report. So I'm going to show you this flow as well over here. So if I go to the run history in this area, you'll see that a minute ago, this flow was kick-started, and that's because it's attached to my button. And I'm also going to show you how that works. So by doing that, what that then means is that when I come over into my report over here, this data set is now either refreshed or being refreshed. It's not too big of a data set, so hopefully it will have refreshed in a second or so. And we'll see the direct changes and commentary based on what we've just put in. And we see these commentary here. So we see here demo, and we can see the percentage differences. We can see the variances. So I didn't actually change a lot of the values. So some of the variances are 0 here. And then we can actually filter on these bits as well. So if I click on, for example, this one here, we can see the differences, and it's actually really small there as a part of that. And in particular, so if I take that off now, we can see that based on what I've actually chosen as my forecast values, it's changed the actuals for the revenue from 208,000 to 2,260. And that's because the values that I entered just for demoing were very small. I was basically reducing a lot of these values to 0.4, 0.6, and these employee benefits and discounts are quite small factors in the overall picture. So please feel free to put in any questions in the chat or anything you want me to expand in further. So that's the overall solution. That gives you an idea about it. Now let's actually, delve a little bit more into the mechanics of how it's actually built. So Power BI wise, we have report pages, and we have essentially the SharePoint list is brought into the application, and then those values are multiplied into, so if I go into the mQuery here, we bring in the SharePoint details and then multiply the account details by that forecast value. So that's actually quite straightforward. Now, in terms of the app, I think let's actually spend a bit of time on the app and perhaps building it from scratch as well. So when I bring a blank app in again, I'm going to bring that field in. As you saw, I had the option to either choose an app or create as new. So this time, let's go ahead and create as new. Just want to make sure it opens in this window. Click OK. I've got another tab there, so I hope it opens in the right one. Yep. Which it is doing. So I'll build out that app fairly quickly from scratch. Okay, so I have a blank app here, and we're going to build out that app in just a second. So when you create app from Power BI, what happens is some of these tables appear, and it introduces this Power BI integration, which also allows you to refresh the data set. But I'm going to start from a blank page. Now, what we do need to do is actually bring in the data source, as it doesn't come in automatically. So I want to bring in that SharePoint list, because I want the app to talk to that SharePoint list. So when that loads, I'm going to click on Jessie JN as my list and pick the JN finance list, because that's the list that I want to read and write from. Now, before we even begin, a couple of things I want to bring into the app is I want a drop down with the different forecast values I have. So on the onStart, actually, I'm not going to use that there. I said that. I want to bring in the accounts list. So the accounts list is not something that is in the SharePoint list apart from as a value of the drop downs. So just for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to bring in those accounts. So I'll format that. So we have an accounts list, which is just a temporary collection that I'm building here with all of these results. So if I now run that on start, if I click on that, I have this accounts list that I can use. Now what I'll do is I'm going to chuck a gallery on the page. I'm going to connect it to accounts list. And then what I will do is I'll start putting some stuff on the page. So I do want the account name. I actually want to drop down in here as well in order to do my forecast. And this is where I'm going to say my drop down is going to have the values of these numbers here. So I want to be able to select 0, 0.2, and then actually this one I've gone up to 2. That's going to be selectable. And I also want to put in the comments. I'm going to put in a text box here as well, where I want people to be able to add in the commentary. So I'm just going to, for best practice, rename a couple of these items. So that is my forecast gallery. That's my commentary. As you see, I'm doing a lot of copy and paste here to speed stuff up. So I've got a forecast prediction. And that's actually the forecast prediction drop down. And I've got my account name. Okay. Account name. So I have this. Let's move that a little bit to the right. So that's a view there. I'm going to give it a little theme just so it's a bit nicer. And then we'll put a label at the top. Just call it forecast prediction app. Give that a bit of a fill. Format that a bit nicer. And then the only other thing I'm going to add in terms of component right now is a button to save. Okay, we have a very simple app here at the moment. It doesn't do anything. But what I will walk you through now, and again, for the interest of time, and also to make sure I don't make any mistakes, I'm going to be doing a bit of copy and paste now to show you the actual code elements that make that work. So to begin with, on my onVisible property of this particular page, I'm making a temporary collection called temp call list. And actually, I'm going to put it up here, so just so I can run the onStart. And I'm collecting everything in my SharePoint list. That's JN Finance list. And I want a max ID. So whatever's in my temp call list, I want to know what the maximum number is. So if I now highlight this, we'll see that max ID is number 7, and that's because we have 7 forecasts available right now. Now I'm going to run through this code, which actually saves the data into the SharePoint list. And hopefully this is interesting, even for some of you advanced developers, because this is using for all, and this is not actually a form, right? So I'm doing something a little bit different here to save this data, but it's something I find works really well. Let's get rid of all of that. And this is actually in steps as well, so it'll be easy to run through. And we have got an error here because I haven't actually connected the automate into there yet. So if I run through these step by step. So first of all, what I'm going to do, I'll just take that down, concentrate on this, is I collect everything from my gallery into a temporary collection. So I'm doing a clear collect, which is our formula to basically collect everything in this gallery, which is called forecast gallery, into a collection, right? So if I run this, I was wondering what Steos was, steps, yep. If I run this, essentially what this does is everything in my gallery, in a second, is now in this collection. Right, and I mean, we can't see a lot of it in this view, so we see that it's account name and commentary, but we can't see it. But right now, that's basically taken everything that's on my screen, including all my predictions, and put it in a gallery, or in a collection even. Now, step 2, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the max ID to use to send data, right? So if you recall, we used max ID in the previous step to essentially know what forecast value we're in. Why are we collecting it again? Because things may have changed in the process of us using this application. So our max ID here is 7. So we're on the 7th forecast, which of course means we want to create the 8th forecast. Step 3, I want to build a temporary collection, and here you have to bear with me because it really makes sense at the end now, to essentially store a sample of what I want to send to SharePoint. Cool, thank you for the comment. So what that means is when I send this data to SharePoint, what I want to send is the account type, something in text, commentary, something in text, a date, a forecast prediction, a number, 8, which will be the number of the forecast, and the title, which is an inbuilt SharePoint column. Okay. And now what I want to do is, well, I don't want to actually send that item. So I'm going to take it straight out. Nope, I missed out a step. I haven't got any items in there yet. So number 4, let's go back a step, is I want to now put everything from my temporary collection, and this is an important step, using the for all statement into the collection template I've just made. Okay, so what that means now is in this template table that I've just created, I have the exact format of what I want to send to SharePoint. So I've taken this gallery. Okay, so just running through again, just to make sure everyone's on the same page. I've put it into a temporary collection. I've then made a variable to find out which forecast number I'm on. And then I have made a temporary collection of the format that I want to send to SharePoint, because the gallery is not the format that we want to send to SharePoint. Then I've used this for all function to basically merge the two together, which ends up with this. So nothing has gone anywhere yet, but if you see the way this looks, this is very similar, if not exactly the same as what we need in SharePoint. Now, if you recall, when we made that temporary collection, we added in this holding value of XX. We don't want that. So that step there is just to remove it out. And you see here, I'm periodically coming back here and clicking Alt-X, which runs the formula in that button. So now I have exactly what I need. And we're nearly there. We're actually on the last step now, is I'm going to actually save that data to SharePoint using this for all again. So for everything in this temporary collection called table temp2, I am going to patch into the finance list, and I'm going to use the defaults formula. And the defaults formula essentially means that we have to create a new item for each of these items, which is what we want. And I'm going to take everything from here. So it says here, I'm going to take the title as the title in this table, the index as the index in this table. So it goes through and it writes all those items to SharePoint. So if we did this now, I just put in a few values, so I'll leave it as text input. It's actually going to go ahead and save all that information into our SharePoint list. So if we come across here now, what we should see is all of these new values which have been saved from our Power App, which is great. What we're not doing, however, is telling Power BI to refresh. So at this point, we've built an app and we've shown that we can save data into the SharePoint list. Now, what we do to do that is we create a flow. I'm going to create this from scratch as well and then link it to my app. So I'll come across here and I'm going to create on my flows. If anyone that's new, flows is essentially the place where we can do like automation of like tasks. And so one of those tasks that I want to automate is refreshing a Power BI report. So hopefully once my computer catches up, I'm going to create a new flow. And there's a step that I can choose. It's actually UI driven. So I'm going to go instant cloud flow. And I want the trigger to be Power Apps. I want to click a button in Power Apps. And we'll call it demo 2110. Today's date. Click on new step. And then what I can do is I have a variety of different connectors I can choose from. So I can choose the Power BI connector. And then I can see many, many different actions I can do now. These are a lot in preview now. I can refresh Power BI dataset, and I can choose the workspace. So my report is just sitting in my workspace for now, and I can refresh my dataset, which is Power BI Finance, and I can click Save. At the moment, this flow, if I trigger it, if I test it, it will go ahead and refresh that dataset. But of course, I want that to be done as soon as the Power App has finished doing its commentary and its forecast. So if I click on this button here, well, actually, I'm going to click outside it. So the way you bring flows into Power Apps is you kind of bring a button or something outside, click on Action, click on Power Automate, and this will attach the flow to that button, which is called Demo 2110. And now what I can do is I can actually run that in this button. So after everything has happened, after the data has been saved, I can say, run this flow. Running this flow will, of course, refresh the Power BI dataset. So if I now come over here, and let's delete this button. If I now save another forecast, I'm going to keep it the same just for now. So not only will we see that the data appears in here, if I now go into my workspace, and this is an important thing to know as well. So for your data sets, for a data set to refresh, it needs to be connected to elements within the cloud. So everything has to be online. And that's because if something's on your computer, of course, you need a gateway to be able to access it. So in here, if I go to my refreshes and I go to my refresh history, we actually see that this one here via an API is in progress. So we can see that it's actually been kickstarted by itself by the flow actually calling the API. So now if I come across to my report, you can now see in the correct page, it might take a second to all come through, is we will actually see, we can see it there actually. So in this view, we can actually see this income statement. So I don't think I spent too much time on this page beforehand, but we can now see this text input, which is what we didn't change in the commentary. And we can see the forecast values now being changed. Okay. So I hope that's a useful use case. I've probably run through a lot of what I wanted to run through, but I've got some backup stuff I can show as well. So yeah, we looked at the Power BI report. We built a Power App from scratch. We used the Power Automate connector to actually refresh. And I actually have a video of what I've shown here as well, actually, which I just quickly put in the chat. So, I mean, that was a very simple use case. And I've talked to customers who are actually asking for pretty similar things, actually. This link is absolutely huge. I don't know how to reduce it, so it's just going to be huge. That kind of want similar things where they want to model lines of financial information and then be able to spit it back out. You could, you're basically doing a whole modeling exercise that you may have initially done in Excel. Another really useful use case for this is, for example, if you've got managers looking at, and I have done this for a client before, looking at a set of graphs and charts, but then you want them to be able to essentially add comments, right? We can use this functionality again. So you could say, and we have this comments feature, of course, in Power BI as well. So we can add comments to a report. But in order to actually save that to a database, we could allow a user to make some comments in a Power App and say, I looked at this in Q1 and it was showing me this. And in Q2, it's now showing me this. And you can integrate all these pieces. So are there any additional questions? If not, I was just going to spend maybe like 10 minutes looking at solutions in the Power Apps world. I'm just seeing if there's any other comments here. I'm not actually 100% sure whether you can use the same solution. So let's just try it. If anyone else knows, please do tell us. We're going to find out fairly shortly, but I don't think you can. I don't think you can put it in the same solution. I think ALM for Power BI and Power Apps sits quite separately. Does anyone know? You can't, right? Yeah, or you don't know. I think it's a no. But no, you can't. And actually, one of the things that we've seen is that when you do go between environments with this kind of, yeah, you can't, with this methodology, one of the things to watch out for is that this Power App is sitting in a environment and with a backend structure. So if I had a SharePoint list that was connected to a dev or test or prod, I haven't found an easy way of actually switching out this connection. Whereas if you're doing ALM for just the Power BI report, you can achieve that. There's something to think about. So what I'll do is I'll just show you how solutions work in Power Apps and distribution. So a couple of things to know actually before we do that is in order to share the solution that I've just shown you with users, you can't just share the Power BI report. You need to share the Power App as well separately. And you need to share the access to this SharePoint list so that users can access the data. So all three of those are necessary to share the entire solution. So of course, when we're thinking about this in a large scale production environment, we should be using AD groups and sharing to the AD group. So in the Power Apps infrastructure, the way that we package up things is using something called solutions. So what I can do here is I can say, well, I want to create this this demo solution here. I can select a publisher. Now, publishers are basically really important because what they do is they prefix any tables that you create. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So if I go, I want to create this new publisher called demo solution. And I'll also call it demo solution, but the prefix I'm going to give it is DMO. Save that. I'm going to choose that publisher, demo solution, and then I'm going to create that. And it's giving me a version number straight away. And then from here, what I can then do is once my solution has been created, I have a few navigation panes on the left-hand side. So I have an overview, I have all the objects in the solution, and I have a history of the solution as well. So in overview, I can see the publisher name, and various other details. In objects, I'm going to start adding in that app. And then we can actually take this solution just like you would an app and move it between environments. We can also use DevOps as well to automate this using pipelines. So if I go to add existing app and I go to Canvas app, that Canvas app which we made, which is called app, I don't think I actually saved it. No, it's just sitting there without a name at the moment. That's fine. I'll just take the one that I showed first, which is called Finance Power BI Scenario, and I add that in. And it's locked. So let's close it down. It quickly realizes that it's not locked. There might be a bit of a lag. So close it. So the solution is now being added, or this app is now being added to the solution. And so what I can do here is I can add in multiple apps, multiple flows. So let's try this as well. So if I go into automation and go to Cloudflow and then go to outside, it's not actually showing here because I think I created it in a different environment. But what I can do is create a new Cloudflow and actually create it from within the context of the solution. And what that means is I can then move the solution as a whole. So I can move the app and flow together. And the other thing I want to show you in terms of the prefix element is if I was going to, let's say I'm going to create a new table actually. So I create a new table. So this is a Dataverse table, which is where we store essentially data within Power Apps, within the Power Platform. It's one mechanism anyway. So if I call it Dataverse, let's call it demo test or something actually. So I'm creating this blank table called demo test. I haven't added anything into that table yet. For anyone that doesn't know, Dataverse is basically a relational database, and the easiest way that I think I would describe it is it's like a SharePoint list, but a million times better. course, that's not strictly true, but it's yeah, a million times better. But essentially within demo test, you see that it's been prefixed with this DMO_demo test. This finance Power BI app has also been prefixed with DMO_finance Power BI scenario. And that is going to make it a lot easier for me now to find where my solutions and things are. I hope that makes sense. So that's solutions. So just to show you how we then package these up as well for the last couple of minutes, I can take my solution called demo solution. And in the overview, I can go ahead and export this solution. And what it will do is allow me to basically publish my changes or check for any issues and click next. I have this option to export it as managed or unmanaged. And essentially what that means is a managed solution is a solution that we do not edit once we've moved into another environment. An unmanaged solution is something that we can edit. So managed solutions, as you may imagine, we do that when we go to a production environment and we don't want developers touching it after. So that's now exporting a file, which will appear in my documents in a second. And while that's happening, see if I can quickly find the GitHub repo with all the files. Should be able to. I think if I just type in my details here, I haven't looked at it in a while, but pretty sure it's still there. Oh yeah, here it is. So I added these a fair few months ago. So please let me know if there's any issues with some of those files. So that's the GitHub repo, all the decks and stuff. So I've now got a solution that has been exported. So if I come over to another environment, so this is Jesse Navaranjan's environment. I was in the default environment before, and I can import a solution. I can browse for it, and this will open up my downloads. And I can actually bring it in now. And this will now move between environments. Which is actually called test solution, that's what we called it, right? I'm not sure what it is too. Must have clicked download twice. And I can import that into my other environment here. So that's now coming in to this environment here. And we can also do this all automated as well using GitHub and DevOps and using pipelines so that you don't have to actually do any of this manually as well. Okay, that's pretty much all I wanted to cover, and I left a few minutes at the end anyway for questions. Are there any questions from anyone? Anything at all, really? Yeah, you can. You can basically package them all up into one solution. So Aziz was asking about creating a few apps a few months ago. Yeah, you can. You can take them between tenants as well. Because it depends on what you created them on. So if it's like a SQL connector, or depends on what the connectors are, but you can definitely move. I move between tenants quite often. Any questions or thoughts on anything else I've shown?
Thank you, Jesse. So we're just waiting for some questions. So it's a great opportunity to ask any questions you have based on what Jesse has just demonstrated, a hands-on demo. Really, really, really helpful hands-on demonstration. Here we go. A question by Yobert Adoma asking, does Power Apps have issues with caching?
I'm just thinking about that. I have experienced issues with it. So you have to go in and like clear your cookies and stuff so that it doesn't like save things. But that was also quite a number of years ago. So I'm not an expert on the caching elements, but you can use like the Google console and see what's coming into the app. But yeah, I'm not an expert on it, but I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago, like when the tool was fairly new still, I did experience some issues where certain values weren't changing on the screen. But since then I haven't. Anyone else feel free to also jump in with any thoughts you have on that or experiences.
Okay, so here we go. Akhilesh has mentioned possible to embed, or asked a question here, possible to embed a Canvas app inside a Power BI dashboard for some interactive experience?
Yep, we can do that. So there's a couple of ways we can do that actually. So we can embed a tile from Power BI, or we can embed the entire report. So just because I have this report handy, I'll show you how to embed the entire report. So you basically have to click on embed report and then click this publish to, no, not that one. Try that again. Embed report and website or portal. And then you can essentially use this link here. So I'll just copy that. And in my app, I can bring in a Power BI tile here. And like I said, we could actually, and I might have something here. So in my workspace, I have a superhero dashboard. So I could basically bring in this this dashboard tile. That's one way. So I'll just let that load. And the other way I can do it is if I click on Power BI tile, but this time I say I don't actually want to pick a workspace or a dashboard or any of that. There's something called a tile URL here. So I'll just paste my entire link in there, and that will actually bring in the entire report. And what's great is this is like completely interactive. So I can actually click on it. And if I click on the actual tile, we'll open up the dashboard or the report even. So the report's now opening for that superhero dashboard. And for this one, once it's loaded, you'll see the entire report, the Finance Power BI version 2. And it's completely interactive. So I can click on this second tab and you can see the income statement that has come in. So one of the I guess use cases for this, again, that I've used in a real client is they wanted to have a look at creating actions based on data. So we gave them a few cards where it just showed them a few key metrics, and then they could click on that metric and go to the Power BI report. And in the same kind of area on the Canvas page, we also let them create actions. So they see that this metric, let's say for, and I'm making this up, like absence is like really low at the moment, so people aren't turning up for whatever it is, like meetings or whatever. And they can create an action and say, I'm going to work on this because I've just seen that the metric is low. And there's another question here about any resources to learn from. Yeah, there's so many. It's hard to mention a few, but of course, like YouTube is a great place to start building your own tools. Microsoft Learn is great as well. I guess the best way of learning is hands-on experience. And I've got a couple more questions here. So yeah, comment from Kim. That's not quite a question, but yeah, that's true. Do I think a SharePoint list is robust enough? Simple answer would probably be no. More detailed answer is it depends, because it depends how secure you want the data to be as well. But yeah, the simple answer is no. I just used a SharePoint list for this demo. It's easier to do that. Probably use Dataverse or another kind of system. Does Power Apps have compatibility issues with different browsers? So I think Chrome is better, which is obviously strange because it's a Microsoft tool and you'd expect Edge to be better. But also things change in the tooling over years. So some of the issues that I found with Edge were again from a couple of years ago. So no, I don't really see any compatibility issues. there are blogs though that tell you what browsers are supported by Power Apps and mobile systems, etc. And whoops, if I just do this for a second, what I was trying to show you there, didn't realize I had another screen there, is it is useful to think about the responsiveness of the app. So, Windows 11. So if you kind of shrink the app page and stuff, responsiveness is something to consider. And there's another question here about CDS versus Azure SQL. Again, not an easy question to answer, but clients often ask for this kind of comparison. And I guess off the top of my head, like one of the reasons we might use SQL instead is if a client already uses SQL as their kind of main storage area, and we may wish to just leverage that. I guess CDS or Dataverse has a lot of benefits to using it. And one of them is the ability to actually set up security profiles and do row level security. It's all fully integrated, right? And I mean item level security actually. So within a certain table, I can set up business rules to hide and show fields, all integrated into the Power Platform ecosystem. Whereas if I was going to do that in SQL, I'd have to, I guess, do that on the front end, which is slightly different. So if it were up to me, I'd want to use Dataverse if I'm building a Power Platform solution as it's fully integrated. As an example, if I was building a model-driven app and I wanted to do auditing in Dataverse, I just press a button and it would just start auditing for me. Whereas if I was doing that in SQL, I have to build a temporal table and configure things slightly differently. Any other questions?
So I believe that's the final question. Oh, we have another. We have, yes, comparison. So Kim, yeah, that's correct, Kim. So the difference between when to use Dataverse and Azure and SharePoint will be discussed in detail at the Dataverse Summit. I know, Kim, you'll also be doing a session as well. So yeah, that all those topics will be deeply covered because it's not just a blanket answer. It always depends on your scenario and use case and very specific requirements. So here we go. Here's a question by Gerard Simpson, who's asking, what do you think are the key tipping point criteria for changing from SharePoint list to Dataverse? So again, there's many, I guess, to kind of discuss from a requirements perspective there, Gerard. In short, you know, the Dataverse is designed to handle data sets in a different way to the way SharePoint is, but there's also licensing constraints. Jesse's mentioned around the security elements and granularity you get with Dataverse. So again, it always depends on what your use case is. Swanand has mentioned CDS doesn't support stored procedures. So how do you recommend creating, say, forecasting calculations that run on button clicks from Power Apps? So that's quite a good question, actually, Jesse. I'm sure you'd love to entertain that one.
Yeah, Azure Function. That's a really good answer. Yeah, custom connector or running a Power Automate as well. I guess it depends how complex it is. Like these tools aren't designed to do complex calculations, but we have Azure Functions that we can connect to do that. So they can call other softwares basically that can do this.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's different ways to run these types of calculations, and to be honest, often that's where you would synchronize, say, the CDS with Data Lake, right? You know, to host financial data and calculations. The Dataverse the Data Lake is a better place because. And again, all this kind of discussion around CDS, we're going to be talking about it in detail next month. So it's kind of away from the topic, but I think the main takeaway is that the fact is that, yeah, you've got all these multiple data sources, but if we change the discussion to into a context of financial services, then again, you have these constraints when it comes to regulation, when it comes to GDPR. How do you enforce those compliance rules? Earlier in today, you saw a session by Ryan where he showed how Microsoft 365 provides labeling and DLP policies within the platform to manage and manage your data sets. You don't get that out of the box with just regular SQL. So there's many things to consider when with hosting financial data, right? And I think that's where they're the discussion that we want to have today. And Yobert is asking why we can't use export to Excel with Power BI publish to web. Is that one for you, Jesse?
I did read that question, but I'm not really too sure. So export to, I don't really know what that means, to be honest.
Export to Excel with Power BI publish to web. Yep. Yobert, if you could elaborate a bit further on what you mean by publish to web. Do you mean that you'd want to publish the data? You want an option to allow users to export to Excel once you publish to the web? If you could answer, that'd be great. Next question by Swanand is, when is the Dataverse Summit? It's next month. It's between the 18th and 20th of November, so it's next month. So there you go. So Kumar is saying licenses and licenses. So Kumar's kind of answering the questions above, because a lot of it is to do with licenses. As Jesse mentioned earlier, you know, with SharePoint lists, that often falls under the realm of Microsoft 365 seeded licenses, whereas with Dataverse and with premium connectors, again, you know, it's about getting that license, that Power Up license. Thank you for sharing the link for Dataverse Summit, Kim. So Jorge is saying the last time I used a Power BI tile is the visual could not have any filtering or sorting. Do you know if this is still true?
It can, you can filter, and I'm just finding my video on it, but in short, basically it needs to be a table with no spaces, and then you can only filter, and this was true but it was true as of a few months ago, so it may have changed. So last time I looked into it, but basically you can only filter text values, and you can essentially write the formula so that you can filter something on the page. So you can put a drop down on the page which will filter your report on the Power App. So that video I've just sent you actually runs through that in detail. Excellent. Well, we're at the end of the hour, so I want to thank you once again, Jesse, for a great session, highly educational, and it's great to have you here today. So big thanks to attend virtually, and thank you for sharing your YouTube and contact details for the community to keep in touch with you. Yep, thanks so much for having me. Fantastic. So there you have it. That was Jesse.